Hey guys, welcome back to Film Title. Today we'll talk about the biggest removals ever seen by Dr. Pimple Popper. Let's head into it. Number 5. The lipoma the size of a grapefruit. This lipoma is one of Dr. Pimple Popper's most intense cases yet. A patient came in for a lipoma the size of a grapefruit, a large grapefruit, on the back of his neck. The patient said he'd never seen a doctor for it before, so Dr. Lee wasn't sure what it was at first. But naturally, she couldn't wait to find out whether it was a cyst, lipoma, or something else entirely. It took Dr. Lee 3 videos to show the entire extraction from start to finish, but she was able to safely remove the mass. After a few tests, she identified it as a lipoma and was able to begin the extraction. In a gross but satisfying video, Dr. Lee used some serious slicing skills to open the skin and used her hands to dig around the inside of the wound. She was worried her hands would be too small to remove the lipoma by hand, but eventually, she was able to do so. Number 4. The 30-year-old blackhead. One of Dr. Pimple Popper's worst cases is this 30-year-old blackhead, almost the size of a fingernail. This blackhead doesn't look like much compared to some of Dr. Lee's other cases, but there was plenty more hiding under the skin. The patient told Dr. Lee that he tried to pop it once or twice with no luck. Dr. Lee even had to use a bit of muscle to wrangle it out. The blackhead was so deep in the skin that Dr. Lee had to pull out scissors and tweezers to extract it. This is what happens if you don't remove blackheads. Once Dr. Lee used tweezers, she was able to pull out a sizable chunk of a blackhead, which she described as looking like a raisin or a cigarette butt. But towards the end of the procedure, Dr. Lee said she wished she'd left it alone because she was worried it would come back. This is one of Dr. Lee's worst cases because the blackhead didn't come out in one pop, and it might become a problem again in the future. Number 3. The lipoma that weighed more than a newborn baby. This patient went to Dr. Pimple Popper for a large lipoma he had on his shoulder for almost a decade. Not only did he say that it caused him pain and discomfort in his day-to-day life, he also was emotional during the initial consultation because he wasn't sure if Dr. Lee would be able to help him. Dr. Lee initially felt the lipoma to ensure it wasn't life-threatening before she removed it. After an examination, Dr. Lee felt confident the lipoma was benign and she could safely remove it. The mass was roughly the size of a rugby ball, and Dr. Lee was of course excited to remove it. Though the patient had the lipoma for 10 years, it only took Dr. Lee 10 minutes and 5 seconds to remove it, almost in one fell snip. Afterwards, Dr. Lee weighed the lipoma, and it clocked in at 9 pounds and 2 ounces, roughly how much a newborn baby weighs. This emotional case was not only a satisfying removal to watch, but it was amazing to watch how happy it made the patient. Number 2. Dr. Pimple Popper's worst. The big back blackhead. This patient visited Dr. Lee for large blackheads on her back, but Dr. Lee said they weren't just blackheads, there were cysts underneath the needed treatment. These large, disintegrating cysts presented Dr. Pimple Popper with one of her worst cases. In fact, as soon as Dr. Lee touched one of the pimples, it started to leak, as the cyst had started to break down and dissolve underneath the skin. At first, everything that came out of the pimple was a white fluid from the cyst, but after a few minutes, larger, more solid chunks started to flow out. As Dr. Lee proceeded, chunks started flying out of the pimple onto Dr. Lee in the splash zone, which is quite common with some of Dr. Lee's more difficult cases. Dr. Lee continued to pop more on the patient's cysts, which were all messy. Though the ending was satisfying, the mess made this one of Dr. Pimple Popper's worst cases. Number 1. The enormous dilated pore of Weiner. This blackhead could be one of Dr. Pimple Popper's biggest dilated pores of Weiner ever. This enormous mass sat square on the patient's forehead, and Dr. Lee almost couldn't believe how large it had gotten. Once Dr. Lee made the initial incisions, she went in with an extra large extractor to get as much of the pimple out as possible in one pop. However, she had to go in with her extractor multiple times to fully drain the pore, as this was a tough pimple to pop. So to ensure that she got all the cyst out, Dr. Lee had to widen the incision and dig around to finish the procedure. After going in with extractors, scissors, and tweezers, Dr. Lee was able to finish removing the mass. And though it wasn't a satisfying one-pop removal, she was able to remove all of the cyst. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.